Violent protests continue in Kenya with hundreds arrested and at least 2 killed in the latest wave of rallies. Hans Marcial tells us more.
Clashes between protesters and security officers occurred in Nairobi's Kibera slum on Wednesday, with dozens taking to the streets of the capital to protest against tax hikes proposed by the Kenyan government. Since March this year, opposition leader Raila Odinga has been launching several demonstrations against the government of Kenya amid rising cost of living, tax hikes, and alleged corruption, among others. According to Kenyan media, Raila Odinga, the opposition's leader, called for the protests due to the tax hikes plan passed by Kenyan President William Ruto's government last month. 2 rounds of protests took place in Nairobi earlier this month, reportedly having at least 15 protesters dead and hundreds arrested. The tax hikes signed into law by President William Ruto despite a suspension order from the High Court particularly targeted fuel prices. The opposition argues that the tax increases will worsen the already difficult economic conditions faced by Kenyans who are grappling with high prices for essential goods. Ruto's administration defends the tax hikes, stating that they will generate an additional 200 billion Kenyan shillings or $1.42 billion annually. The funds are intended to address Kenya's growing debt and finance initiatives for job creation. In the latest development of violent protests in Kenya, the Interior Ministry reported that over 300 individuals have been arrested. Interior Minister Kithure Kindiko said Kenyan authorities have recorded many cases of vandalism and looting. In response, Kenyan police utilized tear gas to quell groups of ralliers. Meanwhile, according to CEO of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Hospital, George Ray, the violent demonstrations have led to the death of 2 people. Ray said that the 2 had gunshot wounds while 14 others are currently hospitalized. Back in April and May, Odinga and Kenyan President William Ruto agreed to hold talks, but such agreements broke down. Meanwhile, the government of President William Ruto claimed that the opposition of derailing efforts to improve the economy of the country. President Ruto has also issued a warning to opposition leaders for the protests, saying that, quote, "It is not going to be business as usual, and we are not going to allow the use of certain provisions of the Constitution to cause mayhem, to cause anarchy, to destroy property, to destroy lives, merely because we are hiding behind certain provisions of the Constitution. The same Constitution mandates government to protect lives, property, and interests of all other Kenyans." End of quote. This is Hans Marcial reporting, SMNA News.
North Korea is reportedly not responding to calls from the United States over the soldier who illegally crossed the demilitarized zone from South Korea. Let's find out more from Sherry Hayes.
American officials have yet to hear anything back from North Korea over an American soldier who suddenly bolted across the border from South Korea. 23-year-old Private Second Class Travis T. King is an American soldier on a tour of the Joint Security Area on the border of the Panmunjom village. Reports say he suddenly bolted between the blue buildings and crossed into North Korea.
We are still gathering information, but we do not have any of those details at this point.
U.S. officials said King crossed the border without authorization from the military. He was reportedly facing disciplinary action by the American military at that time.
What we do know is that one of our service members who was on a tour willfully and without authorization crossed the military demarcation line. We believe that he is in DPRK custody. And so we're closely monitoring and investigating the situation.
And now the U.S. officials are calling North Korea to clarify the situation as they continue to scramble for King's whereabouts. Although North Korea did not respond to any calls from the U.S. over the matter, it recently conducted test fires of 2 short-range ballistic missiles in the East Sea.
I will say that we condemn the DPRK's ballistic missile launches, as we have condemned their previous ballistic missile launches. They are in violation of multiple UNSC resolutions. They pose a threat to the DPRK's neighbors and the international community. We remain committed to a diplomatic approach to the DPRK, calling them to engage in dialogue, and our commitments to the defense of the Republic of Korea and Japan remain ironclad.
It can be remembered that North Korea said that it was the United States and South Korea that are provoking them for establishing a nuclear war planning group against Pyongyang's missile program. Seoul, Isabugo Sherhis Imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.